what is Marty doing? Why is he having an issue with anger? He might have an internalized rage from the past. Let's put Maslow aside for a minute, and what would Freud say about this? Note-taking is a learning process that involves taking information either from a textbook, from an electronic source, or a lecture, and rewriting the information so that it's in your own words, so that the information is usable.
Note-taking is an invaluable resource. It allows you to go back and review what's been gone over, because you're inevitably going to forget some of the stuff.
Note-taking is when you take in some information and you have to think about it and put it in your own words, or take quotes and just write it down in some sort of way that makes sense to you.
Not every student learns the same way. There are visual learners, there are auditory learners, there are people who need to have learning be something that's hands-on for them. I think that it's important, even in considering note-taking, that we have a variety of note-taking styles that students are able to access.
My style of note-taking is to write everything down, or at least try to abbreviate things.
Basically, when I'm taking notes, it can be words, it can be drawings, just something that will allow me to remember what that professor said. I just take a few words and I make bullet points.
I think it helps when you're taking notes to kind of divide things into sections. Similar thoughts go together on the piece of paper so that when you look at it again, it makes sense.
When I'm reading, if I'm taking notes, I try to read whatever it is incomplete, and then I'll go back and review for parts that I felt were important, because I feel like if you haven't read it all and you haven't absorbed all the material, how can you know what's important enough to take notes on?
It's hard to have a uniform style because the classes are not the same. If you're having a discussion class, it will be different than when you're having a lecture.
The most important thing is that if a teacher writes something down on a board, then you should have it in your notebook, because that means it's important. Other than that, you kind of just have to catch things that are interesting to you or concepts that are difficult for you so that you can go over it later.
In physics, it's really different. In physics, I usually write down definitions, write down the formulas, and I put down an example of an exercise, and that helps me understand it better.
Note-taking has a great value to students because it involves reinforcing learning by having them repeat something that they have either seen or heard from someone else. Just by virtue of the fact that they are rewriting it, hearing it again, using it again, helps to reinforce this learning process and helps to cement the information in their minds and in their memories.
You cannot rely on memory to keep information, to keep that critical information the professor is giving you.
The most useful thing about notes is just that you have to think, you have to kind of process information so it doesn't go in one ear and out the other.
I rewrite my notes. That's another thing that's very helpful. It's just another way of reviewing the information that's been given to me.
Elaborate on what your notes were, make them expanded, and develop them more. Because the way the memory works, I believe, is after a 72-hour period, you start forgetting. And you want to make sure that those notes, they go from your short-term memory to your long-term memory.
Once they learn and get a sense about what their note-taking style is, again, this is going to be strengthened for them because they'll see that it's something that's really working for them.
I feel like it helps to take notes if you're doing any sort of training for a new job or learning a new skill that you're going to need to remember later on.
When I'm at work, I take notes to make sure that I'm getting down what anybody has for suggestions. When you're in meetings, it's great to have that skill so you don't miss anything. So that's definitely a real-world application to taking notes.